A very good evening and welcome to the Etihad Stadium. The boys in blue are arriving, the fans are here, we're here, so that does mean our season gets underway with our first home fixture, but not an easy one, as we welcome Newcastle United, of course, of their electric first game with a big win for them, but similarly matched by City with that 3-0 win over Burnley. We're going to be continuing to hopefully put another 3 points on the board and get some momentum going. New signing Kovacic there, getting to see his first appearance here at the Etihad Stadium, and that man as well, Gvardiol. Will they make that starting 11? Well, you know the first place to find that out is right here on Matchday Live. We'll be bringing you team news in just a sec. Phil Foden there, back at home. There was a lovely moment in that VT of a young Phil Foden coming out as a mascot, and now he gets to play for the club that he loves. And there he is, the main man. I'll be hoping he starts because he's captain in my fantasy football. Let's find out in just a sec. Welcome along to Matchday Live. My name is Cel Spellman, and I've got to say, friends, it is so great to be back with you as we embark on yet another season here at the Etihad Stadium. And joining me, well, we've got an absolute trio to get us underway. Of course, the brilliant Steph Houghton is with us, Steve Howey, and making his Matchday Live debut, Shola Ameobi. Great to have you on, my friend. Just initially, what have you made of Newcastle's start to the season? They were quick out the blocks last week.
Yeah, you go through pre-season. I had a few myself, and you never quite know where you're at. The good thing is, the pre-season tour we had it out in the US. You're playing champion, the quality of Premier League teams, so you can pick yourself. But you never quite know until you get out there for your first game. Listen, they came out the blocks. I was very wary. Villa, obviously a top side with a top manager in Unai Emery, and I think with the way we started, it's just a continuation of what we built on last season, and I think that's hopefully going to, set us in good stead coming into this game, because there's no harder team to play against than Man City at the Etihad Stadium.
Absolutely, I think we're going to be in for a tantalising fixture indeed. Well, let's get straight into team news. Let's not have you wait any longer. Here it is, as chosen by the main man, Pep Guardiola. Our starting 11 looks like this. Ederson in goal. Kyle Walker, of course, captained us after that UEFA Super Cup win in the week, scoring that all-important final penalty. He starts alongside Manuel Akanji and Ruben Dias. And there he is, our new boy, making his home debut here at the Etihad Stadium. Gvardiol as well completes that defence. As we move into midfield, we have Rodri, Kovacic, Foden, or maybe could be Alvarez there in the middle. We'll see what our guests think on that in just a second. Then Jack Grealish, and to complete that starting 11, Erling, Haaland. Thankfully, my fantasy team will hopefully be in good stead for that start. As we look to the bench as well, we've got Ortega, Phillips, Ake, Gomez, Bruyne, Palmer, Cole Lewis, and James McAtee. Steph, first thoughts on that starting 11?
Yeah, I think in terms of what the boys produced on Wednesday and the win against Burnley, I don't see many changes. I think the only question was whether Ake would play and would Alvarez come in. So I think it's a really positive selection. I mean, the squad that Pep Guardiola's got, it's nice to choose from, and especially now you've got Ruben Dias back, which probably adds just a little bit more strength. So I think it's something that we all expected, and like Shola said before, it's going to be a really tough game today.
Absolutely. Steve, let's have a little focus on the midfield. Of course, news that no one wanted to see, particularly City fans. Kevin De Bruyne, of course, with that injury, it's looking like he's going to be out for a little bit. But of course, Kovacic has been brought in and started most games, and I'm wondering what have you made of his kind of start to his Manchester City career?
As I said a few times, and I've said in different things, he looks as though he's been there for a few seasons, looks ever so comfortable in there. I think obviously that's because he's a good player, but I think also you could say that's because of the City lads as well. I think they've helped him settle in very, very well, made his job a little bit easier. I think when you're playing with really good players, it certainly makes your job easier. But we all knew how good he was. But when you look at him closely, and obviously I've been watching him a little bit more closely now that he's come to City, he's a top quality player. So I'd expect him to have a fantastic season, and what better way to start that is here at the first game.
Sure, I mean, I'm sure you've had it in your career, but when you lose such a big player, and one such as big and as important as Kevin De Bruyne, what is it important that the team does to kind of, react to that and make sure that it doesn't hinder them too much, especially with Gundogan going as well in the summer?
Yeah, I mean, you look at Gundogan, he was a massive part of the success that Man City had last season. And to then obviously lose Kevin De Bruyne, who's arguably one of the best midfielders in the world, and again another part of what made you guys special last season. I think ultimately, Pep, you've got an array of talent in the squad, and boys have to step up. I think the reason that you have squads is that competition to keep it high. So when someone has to step in, that the right there, and I think it's really important. Obviously, you mentioned Kovacic coming in. He's a top player. He's been at top clubs. He was at Real Madrid. So he knows how to play in these environments. So it's not just about tactically how and technically, but it's being able to come into a big environment like this and be able to put your best foot forward. And I think he can do that, and certainly can step into that void. And for me personally, I think it's really important that they continue to develop their young players. You look at Phil Foden; he's come through such a superstar of a player, and I think it gives young boys opportunities to be able to step in there and show what they can do. So that's what I'm excited about, seeing who's going to step up, and fill that void from the young academy boys.
Well, that man there, you've just mentioned him. I know that's something that Manchester City fans have kind of been hoping for, Steph. Phil Foden, playing him down the middle. Pep mentioned, I think, in his pre-match interviews before today's game, we kind of forget he's 23 years old, still says he has a lot to learn. But how excited are you about the prospect of him playing centrally, and how do you think he fares in there?
Yeah, you know what, I think, obviously, being here at the club for 10 years and seeing Phil come through the academy and actually training with him in my first couple of years, I mean, you could always tell that he was going to be a really special talent, and his position is in that number 10 role, and that's where he played for the academy, and that's where Pep probably does see him in the future. But I think we had this conversation the other night. I think with young players, it is important that they're able to kind of understand other positions, and I think him playing either on the right side of a three, on the left side of a three, I think he has the ability to play wherever he wants to play, but ultimately he has so much skill in terms of driving at the defences and playing them final balls to the likes of Haaland and to Grealish. That's what he is, and and he has so much skill. So for me, he really does excite us, because I think there's so much more potential. And yeah, he is young, but he's in the best place. He's learning with the best players under the best manager, and it's going to be scary how good he's going to be in a few years if we've seen some of the goals that he scored for City so far and how important he is to the club as well.
Yeah, it is frightening that it does still feel that way. It's so early on in his career, and the potential that he has is frightening. There is, of course, Alvarez starting, Steve. So we were trying to work out, because we do know sometimes he likes to play Alvarez maybe in that 10 kind of role a little bit more, Foden on the side. How do you think he might play? Do you think it'll be Alvarez in there or Foden?
Well, I'm going to say possibly yes. But as we all know, with Pep, we just don't know. It could be completely different. He could have Rodrigo up there. You don't know. But yeah, I mean, my personal opinion is I think you'll just play him in that position, like that kind of 10. We've seen how good Phil is from the left and the right. I mean, just that little clip that you're seeing there, he's picking the ball up from the right and driving in to that area, into the box where players do not dare touch him. But he's that good. Whether in the game, the players themselves, and obviously the manager might have said to them, listen, just have a little chat amongst yourselves, just sometimes switch. Like you have 10 minutes out there and I'll come inside and stuff like that. And then all of a sudden, there's a different problem for the Newcastle players. It's a different kind of player. Maybe it's different thoughts that go through these players' minds, and all of a sudden there's a different challenge. So, yeah, as I said, I think Alvarez will play in that 10. But I wouldn't be surprised if they just swap during the game. Yeah, they've all kind of got that ability and that know-how, haven't they? Well, listen, if you want to join in this conversation, maybe you've got some thoughts, maybe you've got a question for one of our guests, you know how to do it. That all-important WhatsApp number is just at the bottom of your screen now, so that's how you can get in touch with the show. And don't forget as well to download the official Manchester City app. There you can get City Plus and also Recast, where you get to watch some exclusive games and, of course, our Academy boys in action as well. Now, we are celebrating this year 20 years at
at the Etihad Stadium, of course, formerly known as the City of Manchester Stadium. It's actually represented here in the new home shirt as well. So to celebrate that, we're going to take a look back at some of our standout moments here last season. We want to know what was your favourite goal scored at the Etihad last season. So if you go on Twitter, we're running a poll, and there you can cast your vote. And I think we might be able to have a little look at some of them now and let us know if you agree or disagree. We're going to begin with this one from John Stones. Steph, I don't know if you remember this one. It was in the Champions League against Dortmund. Pick that one out.
Not bad, is it, for a centre-half? Are we calling him a centre-half?
I don't know. Maybe who knows these days.
You're trying to say centre-halves can't play.
Oh. Hey, there's no hope for me. Was that a boot or was that
Quality strike.
I think John Stones is like that goal. Just at this moment in time, he's the best in that position, and to be able to strike like that against a team like Dortmund is pretty impressive.
Had a few strikes from centre halves from that distance, haven't you, over the years?
Yeah, no, it's becoming a bit of a regularity. Of course, that Vincent Kompany one as well always comes to mind. Let's take a look then at the second one we are running. So again, same game, but what about this for a finish, Shola?
Yeah, I definitely could not get my hip that high. No, I wasn't as flexible as. No, he's a machine. You know, you think, go with your head. You know, that's instinctively, you know, that's what you think. But he's obviously just such a talent. What a ball as well into the box. But you look at how he can just. For me, it's a movement as well. You know, his movement in the box. I think we look at all these goals, but realise, you know, to get himself in those positions, you have to be a clever striker, and he's obviously bigger and stronger and quicker than anyone he plays against, and he can do stuff like that.
It is amazing, especially given, you know, his body and physique. You think, how is he able to do it? But somehow he does. Of course, we had to get him in there on the vote. Now we're going to take a look at this next one as well. Remember, Twitter is how you can cast your vote on this. So, Steve, again, another Champions League night here at the Etihad Stadium from the main man.
Yeah, wonderful strike, isn't it? You know, left-footed, just brings it in against Bayern Munich. Big game. It was one of those tense moments as well. Obviously, they're looking to progress in the Champions League. Does really well there, but look at that. Wow. Like, goalkeeper's got absolutely no chance. I think there was another angle as well, and it was behind Rodri, and you just see this one here. Just see the ball spinning and turning. It outside the goal. Back in. Top quality.
Lovely. And that celebration is almost becoming synonymous with Rodri. I think it was very similar on that all-important Champions League night in Istanbul. What a man, what a player. Actually, Shola, I just wondered, what do you make of Rodri? Because for me, and I am slightly biased, but I would go as far to say I think he's the best centre defensive midfielder in football at the moment. Yeah,
you know, when you look at, you know, I think, you know, when he first came, you know, you had Fernandinho here, who obviously was for me the best at the time in that position, and he's come along and he's just taken it a step up, you know, in terms of just his quality, his composure, but the way that he fills in. You know, we look at all the nice things that he does on the ball, but he's just such a clever player, and he's never out of position. That's what I love about him, and obviously he's got this habit of popping up with just marvellous goals at marvellous times for City last season. For me, he's a complete player, and he's one that I imagine will be here for the next 10, 12 years. Yeah, fingers crossed, I hope so. But you, Steph, you know as well, playing, of course, at City, that role is so pivotal to the way that Pep's teams want to play. And I think last year, I think he played something almost 63 games that man started. As a player, as you know, how difficult is it, one, just to play that many games, but to sustain it at the level that he has played at?
I think for me last season it was more of his consistency in his performance. I think, as you said, that role for City throughout the age groups, throughout the women's team is so pivotal to how we play. And like Shola touched on, it's not even just about the nice things that people see, his passes, his goals, but it's like more physically, he's covering for people, he's filling in, he's breaking up the player. And I think as ex-players, you probably recognise and you probably appreciate that, especially as a defender, like that person that's in front that can to break up the player. But I think for me Haaland gets a lot of credit where it's due because of the amount of goals that he scored. But I think Rodri, for me, in terms of being a leader and really a person that drives people on, I think for me last season he was unbelievable for City, and even in the game on Wednesday he's the one that's pushing the team forward and driving them on and setting the standards, and it's quite scary because he could actually get even better. And he's probably in the right place to do that with the right players. And we speak about De Bruyne missing. I really do think he could probably step up in that respect and really lead the team like De Bruyne does.
Speaking of De Bruyne, actually, we couldn't not show a couple one of his goals there. So let's take a look at the king, of course. Remember, I mean, this was such a turning point. I think, kind of where we were kicked on in the season. But Steve,
so powerful.
That's just something else, isn't it? There's not many players, I don't think, that can. It's almost like he went, I'm going to step up here and I'll do what needs to be done on my own.
Yeah, I mean, it's stunning play. I mean, first of all, it's great hold-up play from Erling Haaland. Shows great strength. But again, it's another one. It's outside of the post.
Yes.
Goalkeepers have got no chance really with them because you can see it's maybe a foot inside the post, but it starts off about 2 yards out, 2 feet outside the post, and just he gets right across it and whips it. But the way that he drives forward as well, not only drives forward, gets ahead of defenders, stays ahead of defenders.
Yes.
You know, sometimes a midfield player, when he goes into that area, the legs just start to tire us just slightly and then they get caught up. He's just breaking away from them. So strong, so powerful, and what a finish at the end.
Yeah, for me, it's his clarity of his mind. He knows exactly what he wants to do. You know, his split-second decision making is what makes him world class. And you look at that. You look at, he's passed it in from 35 yards. Essentially, but he knew exactly the position, he knew what he wanted to do, and call the keeper off guard. It's just a wonderful player, a guy who just knows exactly what he wants to do at every given moment.
Just quickly on that, might be an obvious question, but can you train that? Can you improve that decision making that you're talking about? Because I mean, Gundogan was another one that comes to mind straight away. It's like he's 3 steps ahead. Is that something you can work on as players, or is that sometimes just innately a capability?
I think it's innate. Certainly in world class players, it's innate. They have that ability. You see it all through the age groups. I would say Phil's probably like that. He's been like that all the way through. But yes, you can work on it. You can develop that. But players of his caliber, I think it's something it's God-given, and obviously the work at the physical side to be able to, make sure they apply it on the pitch. But for me, when you look at a player like him, he knows exactly where everyone is.
He's always like 2 steps ahead of everybody. We see space, and you're thinking, oh well, we can't really play the ball, and then he's able to do that, and Haaland finishes. I think
it was the ball he played against us in the 3-3 up at St James's Park. I think was. And you're like, I'm watching him. Even I didn't see that, and I'm sitting up in the stands, and so it's that
until
ability,
the replay,
it's that ability that he has, and it's just wonderful to see. It's just a shame that, it's not a shame for us, but it's a shame that he's out for the next few months.
I think the analogy I used to use is like somebody that knows exactly what's going on around them is an excellent photographer. So before the ball comes to you, you've took 5 or 6 pictures. So you know what's around you, and then all of a sudden the ball comes to you. Now you're looking at your pictures. 2 of them has been deleted because you can't get that ball to that area now. But as you're looking, while them 2 have been deleted, another 1 or 2's popped up as well. So you've still got 5 or 6 pictures that you can actually look at. He's got 7 or 8. Phil Foden's the same. It's just absolutely scary.
Yeah, it's frightening. Well, we're all the better for it, of course. And by the way, currently live results on that poll is Haaland is winning. So maybe if you agree, you want to enhance that. Maybe you're thinking, no, I think it might be another one of them. Get on Twitter. You don't agree with that, do you think?
I like that De Bruyne goal, to be honest.
Yeah, okay. Steph's vote.
Arsenal at home.
Goal. Okay.
Big game.
Big game. Right early doors as well, wasn't it, in that game, actually? But yeah, Twitter's where you can cast a vote. We'll bring you the results at full time. And speaking of live results, it's always nice to talk about Manchester United losing. They are 2-0 down against Tottenham as we speak. Ooh, 86 minutes so, unless they pull something out the back. Oh, I've got 2 United defenders in my fantasy football.
Oh.
Brilliant. Fantastic. Let's take a look at Newcastle's team news then. Here they are. Big first win for Eddie Howe's men. And here is how they are lining up against us. So Pope in goal. Trippier, of course, captains his side alongside Shaw, Botman and Byrne. What a player and what a season he had last year. Guimaraes in the middle alongside new signing Tonali. 2 goals for him last week. Joel Linton as well completes that midfield, and then a forward 3 of Almiron, Gordon and Isak. Steve, Let's begin with that performance last week. Eddie Howe, we wonder how is he going to kind of keep that going from last season? Where will they be at? But they came out the blocks, and I think everyone was really impressed with how fast and strong they all looked.
Yeah, I mean, I think Shola had said earlier on in the show that are they going to be able to produce it and kind of hit the ground running this season? I thought it would be a tough game against Villa, because I think Villa will be kind of in and around there again like they were last season, and they've improved. They've got a very good manager. So I thought it was going to be a tough game. Now, a lot of people, and I think including the Villa manager, has basically sort of said it kind of flattered them and flattered Newcastle a little bit. I kind of disagree, because the game of football is creating chances to score chances.
Yeah.
Now, Villa created chances, but they didn't take them. Newcastle did.
Yes.
That's why they scored 5 goals. That's the name of the game, to be quite honest. Newcastle do look dangerous, look very, very dangerous going forward. I think a lot of the things that pleased a lot of the fans was Tonali, him coming in, his performance. You kind of worry sometimes for a big money player coming in from maybe Italy or Spain or somewhere like that. Is he going to fit into the Premier League? We've seen players, big name players, come in and struggle. He has hit the ground running, and I think kind of combination with Guimaraes and certainly Joe Linton, who, let's be honest, for me personally, and I'm sure a lot of people that watch him, the turnaround from somebody like him is just ridiculously good, because he is basically one of the first players that you'll put on a team sheet. Almiron's exactly the same. So yeah, a fantastic start to the season. They'll look to this game, and I think Shola again mentioned it before. Newcastle players, we think, and this probably is a really good time to play Manchester City, purely and simply because of they played in midweek. Newcastle have had a week off. They've had a couple of easy days. They might have had a day off. They've had some hard sessions, but they're just peak and to play tonight.
Yes.
So it will be a tough task.
One man who he looked brilliant, I thought, last season, but just seems to almost now could be going up again, is Isak. I know Steph, he's in your team.
Yeah, he is in mine,
sadly. But he's a real danger, and he looks like, again, similar. We haven't even seen half of how good he can be.
Yeah, absolutely. He came in last season, and unfortunately he was out for, I think, 4 or 5 months, on and off with a thigh injury, and seeing him in training, seeing his quality, prior to the injury, it got me excited. Unfortunately, obviously, injuries happen. The thing that I love about him is the fact that he can stretch the pitch, but he's great on the ball as well. He can hold the ball up, he can see it pass, and I think that really helps our midfield. You look at the goals that we're starting to get now from midfield, the fact that he stretches it and he can hold it up, and the amount of assists that he has as well towards the back end of last season was immense, and it's great to have him. You've got Callum Wilson as well, who's the amount of goals he's scoring, and I think they're both pushing each other, but he definitely has the quality to be a top striker in this league for a very long time.
So when you watch players and they'll have a certain moment when you go, well, that just seems to be above the level. There was the goal, I don't know if you remember it, when he was almost ran along the byline and took on against, that was just a joke. What would you like to see, when you mentioned Wilson, them both start together? Is that a possibility, do you think?
It happened, I think, once last season. It's tough because they're both number 9s. And I know, obviously, with Isak's quality, he can play off the left as well. But really, his strength is stretching defenders. His pace and using his power and his intelligence as well. So yes, that's something that we know we've got in our arsenal. If we need it, and you look at the tandem that they have, he came on Callum and could have had a hat-trick last week. Yeah. And so to have that ability to wear defenders down, and then you've got the quality of either Isak or Callum Wilson coming on off the bench, that's what's going to keep us up there.
Yes.
Scoring goals on a regular basis, and then you put in the likes of Tonali, who for me is a game changer again.
Agreed.
In terms of that midfield, the level of quality that Bruno showed last season. I think he's got the ability to even take us to the next level. Tonali, once he settles in, he's been in pre-season, and even though he didn't speak a word of English, he was in with the lads. You could tell it straight away. A bit like Kovacic is here. He's just hit the ground running, and he's fitted in great. And obviously the performance last week just showed that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you mentioned there as well, I think when we were speaking before the show, it's a massive project that's happening over at Newcastle. I think you said as well, almost maybe trying to emulate what City did in a way. But they are going the best way about it seems. I'm now looking at the bench as well. I mean, Livramento has just joined the squad, Harvey Barnes as well. So you're seeing that depth, that quality in depth, which is going to be important if you're playing Champions League as well, Steph.
I think that's the big thing for Newcastle, is that they're competing in a Champions League, and obviously they've had the week this week to prepare for this game, but in a few weeks it'll be 3 games a week and you're having to maybe rotate your squad. And I think what Shola said in terms of Isaac and Callum Wilson, obviously competition is great because it does push you on as a player, and it looks like, especially the front three, you've got 2 players for every position. You've got the likes of Harvey Barnes that's joined, but you've got Anthony Gordon that's settled in a bit better. I thought he was really impressive last week, and he's so quick, and he's providing assists. So I think that's what Newcastle had to do, and they've got players that want to go to the football club, and people want to go and play Champions League football. And I think for me it'll be interesting to see how they deal with the 3 games in the week. But look, they've got a squad now that can compete on all levels.
Steve, sorry, Steve.
I was just going to say, yeah, they have got a squad, and I think that the squad could get better, and they're going to need it to get better if they're going to compete in the Champions League. I think I'd say in the Pep's interview, and he was like, it's a big difference between, Premier League, Carabao Cup, FA Cup. But when you've got Premier League, Carabao Cup, FA Cup, Champions League, which is that standard is right up there, it does take it out of your squad. So they're going to need these bodies. But at the moment, at this particular time, because the Champions League hasn't started, one of Eddie Howe's biggest problems is keeping everybody happy. Because players will be annoyed that they're not playing, because they've done the pre-season, they're nice and sharp, they're ready to go, and they feel as though, wow. I mean, for instance, you look at Wilson, comes on, scores. Back on the bench. Yeah. So he's like, well, what more can I do? And as Shola said, he could have scored a couple of goals, but that's the challenges managers have when you've got big squads with good players.
Sorry, go on.
Yeah, I think that's the shift, isn't it? When you're trying to get to that next level, I think players have to understand that it's going to take more than 14, 15 players. It's going to take a squad. You look at your Man City squad, the amount of rotation that happens, throughout the season. And I think it is a big shift when you've had a team, look at our team last year, 14 players really played the majority of all the games. And so it's a different shift. You mentioned 4 players that we brought in this summer, 4 straight into the team, or 4 of them could. And so it's going to be that little bit of an adjustment for us in terms of, dealing with, playing on the different fronts. So that's going to be an interesting dynamic shift that I'm looking forward to, hoping to see Eddie try to manage.
Yeah. We don't envy that role anyway. Steph, I mean, when we're going to see Newcastle Day, how can you see them coming out and playing against it? Because they were so attacking and direct in their opening game this season. Do you think they might cater that slightly because they're coming to the Etihad to play at City, or do you think we could be seeing a very kind of similar performance?
I think probably a similar performance. I think the guys have mentioned before, like, it is, in terms of, there's never really a good time to play City, but off the back of a Super Cup and all the travel and the beginning of the season where City are in terms of the season itself, I think for me, and the players that he has, I don't understand why he would change his methodology and what he wants to do. So I think they'll be wary of City, because City have got great quality in them attacking areas. But I think as we seen last season when Newcastle played Manchester City, it was very much your attack versus our attack, and I can't really see much different today.
Yeah, very exciting for the fans indeed. What a start to the show. I mean, we're already nearly halfway through, 35 minutes until kick-off here at the Etihad Stadium. So we're going to take a little break from us here and go and see what Alistair Mann and Andy Morrison had to say. Of course, they are your commentary team, which you can get on the official Manchester City app. Here they are, Pitchside.
Well, welcome back to the Etihad. 90 days. I've been missing this place. Always feels like home. I think we're going to be here quite a lot this season. Myself and, of course, former City captain Andy Morrison. Let's quickly reflect on Wednesday night in Athens and a late night in Greece and baking temperatures. How's that going to affect them today, do you think?
I don't think the manager will let them affect them. But I think it's important that he alludes to it. I think he needs to make it out, and he does it in his normal humour way to get his point across. It has to be said, why it couldn't have been 24 hours, because it is priceless at this. The games come thick and fast, and players need to recover. And player welfare is key, and we always talk about that. So, but it hasn't happened. We're here tonight, and he'll be making sure that they're switched on and ready to go.
Let's talk about positives, and there were so many on Wednesday. A full debut for Joško Gvardiol. What did you make of him?
Ali, the first I saw was Leipzig last year, and it was a really difficult night for them here. So I wasn't sure what the qualities were. I looked at him at close quarters, and he carries the ball really well through the thirds. And that might be something that we'll have to look at this season, because teams block off now. If they come with a high press, and there's so much detail in the press, if you've got a player that can step past somebody, then the whole game changes. John Stone did it a few times last year, and the whole picture changes, and that structure that they're in then becomes a bit wide open. I see he's got the ability to do that. You know, at the moment I still haven't seen enough, but there's talent there. He's comfy in possession of the ball. He doesn't get run. He's got a great physical presence, and for me the key is he carries the ball really well when he's in possession.
Does it help him that he's got Ruben Dias alongside him?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I look at the different qualities that our back 4 or 5 centre halves have, and there's just a steeliness about him. There's something that's beyond his years. And I always feel comfy, and I'm always happy when he's in the team. Listen, it doesn't matter whether it's Stones, Akanji, whoever it is, Aki, but you need players who demand, who out of possession of the ball, when you're still on the halfway line, it's when you're at your most vulnerable. He does not stop talking. When he recovers to the edge of the box, he's giving out instructions. So that is such a huge part. Other players, Akanji and Aki, aren't the same sort of characters, so that is so important to your back 4, a vociferous leader like he is.
Talking about being vociferous and leadership, looks as though Kyle Walker is the club captain, particularly in the lengthy absence of Kevin De Bruyne. What will it mean to him, and what does it mean to the whole setup that he steps up and tucks away what turned out to be the winning penalty on Wednesday?
Yeah, it was. I thought it was the best penalty of the lot. But listen, you're the captain of Manchester City, and I know how proud that is, and that is such a accolade to carry. And you know, and he'll respect the fact that the players, you know, have put him forward. The manager thinks that, you know, with De Bruyne out injured, he's the next person to go to, and that makes you feel sort of 10 foot tall. And not that he needs to feel that way, but it is just another little feather in your cap. And you know, I met Kyle at a golf do in the summer, and just very, very humble. But there was a strength among him. I could just see a steeliness about him that I really liked.
Let's talk about the opposition. They're coming here in expectation, not hope. They feel that they've got the credentials after a top 4 finish to hurt City today. Where does City need to be careful?
Well, obviously on the counter-attack, you know, and we saw that the other night, and it will always be how City deal with the transition when they're in possession, when there's really good possession and your fullbacks maybe get a little bit higher and you get a bit more advanced, because it's the mistake then is how you react to that. And you know, the fact that they got a Wilson, who, you know, was in the last England squad, to come off the bench, it shows what a club they are now, and they're a progressive club, and there's a feel-good factor. You speak to people. I spoke to Steve Houghton, and you know, there's an energy there that we've felt grow over the years, and where we are now. But they're at the start of that journey, and you know, when they're going to be a really, really difficult, especially on the back of their assault, and how good they are, and they're very, very physical as well. Set plays, and you know, Eddie Howe is a huge advocate of set plays, and they've got 6 or 7 lads who are 6'3", 6'4". So our key players in the spring, in the zonal areas, are going to have to be at the top of their game today.
Well, they're the thoughts of Andy Morrison, and both myself and Andy have given you some inspiring moments in the last few weeks, last few months anyway. Istanbul, we were together, night we'll never forget. Going to be with you all season. Download the app and hear me and Andy's commentary. Back to you, Kel.
You heard the man. No, poor Joe. Alistair Mann, you heard. No, just we'll move on very, very swiftly.
None of us got it.
No one got it. Shocking. But as I say, download that official Manchester City app, and that's where you can get their commentary. Right, let's take a look at our defence. And Steve, I mean, you can see it there on your screen. That's a hell of a back 4, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, that's why I think this game today, for instance, is going to be intriguing, because you've got a team like Newcastle that love to go forward and love to attack. But we all know how good City's defence is. So it will be a tough test for the back four.
Yes,
definitely. So it'll be interesting to see, how really strong are they, even though we know they're very strong. How they're going to cope against the pace, because it's a lot of pace up front for Newcastle with Almiron, obviously Isak and Gordon, but there's no doubt top quality players.
We kind of touched upon it before, Shola, but with Gvardiol, of course, a big money move from RB Leipzig, was great in the Champions League against us last season, but he's touted as being up there as one of the top 5 almost best young centre halves. We're assuming maybe playing left back, but I guess it doesn't matter. We just want to try to help him settle in and get some rhythm going.
Yeah, he's definitely, it's definitely going to be a challenge for him today. You look at, as Steve mentioned, you look at the pace that we have, and I know that's something that if Newcastle are going to get anything out of this game, they're going to have to utilise that, try and get in behind the back four. So he's going to have his work cut out. But like you mentioned, he's played at the very highest level. It'll be interesting. First home game, you don't know nerves. That can play a part, but. Like I said, he's such a talent, and he's got great players around him. Like I said, he settled in, played, midweek, and it seemed like he'd been there a while already. So, great player. Again, it's going to be really important that for Newcastle to push them early, to see what he's about, and see if we can get some joy out of him. But certainly hasn't been a happy hunting ground for Newcastle United, the Etihad, over the past few years. So it'll be interesting to see if we can change that today.
Sorry, Kel, I was just going to say very quickly that as a defender, you can be a very, very good defender, and you're playing against a very, very good forward, i.e. a Haaland or somebody that's got all the attributes. One thing that terrifies defenders is speed.
Yeah.
Don't like it. Because that person could take a bad touch, but because they're so quick, they're on it, and there's nothing you can do, even if you've read that pass. So, as I said, it will be a test for the City lads today, because all 3 lads are very, very quick.
You mentioned at the start of the show, Ruben Dias coming back into the team. Obviously, he was out for a week with, I think he picked up a concussion injury in trainings. Those were the protocols. But we saw when he came back after injury last season, Steph, it was a real game changer for us at the back. How important is he to the City defence? And obviously now been here a few years, is I guess probably one of the captains. I know that's not been fully decided on yet, but he was last year. Yeah,
I think he's massive for City. I think when we don't play with him, you've missed that little bit of leadership and that organisation, and I think especially playing against Newcastle, they'll be very good on the transition, and I think he will have everybody organised in case that does happen. But yeah, I think in terms of watching him all last season, even just like the simple things that probably people don't really appreciate, his blocks, his ability to organise and communicate with other people and praise people, I think that goes a long way when you're playing next to someone like that. And I think it's absolutely massive for City that he's back and he's fit and he's ready to go. But I think we all speak about Diaz and John Stones, but for me, Kyle Walker, I'm absolutely made up that he's captain for today. I think we speak about speed, and there's no one quicker than Kyle Walker, and that'll be an interesting matchup with him and Gordon, because Gordon's one of the quickest players in the Premier League, and you're talking someone that's got experience versus inexperience, and them two definitely, in terms of Walker and Diaz, have definitely got to lead the line today for Man City.
Sorry, go on.
Yeah, Diaz is just one of those defenders, just loves defending. Yeah. You can see that, it takes pride. It takes pride in it, and I think that's what always comes across to me when I watch him play. Like you say, the leadership and making sure everyone's in the right areas. But one-on-ones, you rarely see anyone get past him, and that's when you've got a proper defender.
Yes, I mean, I wanted to ask as well with Kyle. In that UEFA Super Cup game was great, but he did get caught out a couple of times, Steve. Is that a cause for concern, or do you think maybe that is just still building up and finding some rhythm again?
I don't think it's... I mean, listen, any player can get caught out at any time, when you're playing against top quality. I think, obviously, I think Steph's just mentioned it. He's got a tough game today against Gordon with the pace. I still fancy Kyle, to be quite honest. But yeah, I mean, there's always a time for that split second. You might switch off. Sometimes it costs you, sometimes it doesn't. But it isn't something for me specifically that I've gone, oh, that's something to absolutely kind of focus on. I think the manager would have, I'm talking about Eddie Howe, like this is where the weakness is. I just think it was a lapse in judgment a couple of times. I think the manager, Pep, would have just sort of said, listen, hold on a second, this is what happened. Just to reiterate that them facts, just to sort of drill them back into into his head. But I don't think there's any issues otherwise. No.
And also, Steph, I mean, you know, but when you get the captain's armband, which he has had now since the back end of pre-season, obviously captain in the UEFA Cup. What does that do to you, you know? And do you feel that kind of it brings something else to your being in your game in a way?
I think, yeah, you do have a level of responsibility wearing an armband, even just wearing the City shirt. It's a big honour, and I think, for me, Kyle does his sort of leadership, and he leads by example, by the effort that he puts in every single game. We're speaking about his defending, but we see him running 60, 70 yards to do an overlap and run, and he never gets the ball, and you're like, actually, that's the good run to do, because then it allowed Mahrez last season, Foden last season to cut in and shoot. So I think that unselfish behaviour that he shows, and for Kyle, I think he's an experienced player in this group. He's been here for a long time, and he obviously has some sort of influence on the team. And for me, I think the way people lead in different ways, but he seems to have just taken to it and just performed like how he always does.
Steve, you wanted to interrupt something?
Yeah, I think that we'd seen something, whether it was on social media, whether it was in the newspapers or just the news in general. You'd seen Kyle, there was a meeting with the manager, and they went to a restaurant, and then there was talk about him, is he going to leave, and was he going to go to Bayern Munich and stuff like that. You know, was it a meeting with the manager, and the manager sort of saying, listen, I want you to stop, and in all fairness, you're going to be captain of this team a few times, just to give him, because there was a little bit of uncertainty about where's he going to be. And I think for a manager to come and possibly say that to him, and because the evidence is he's been captain a couple of times now for City, like in the pre-season games and obviously in a few other games, that would give him such a boost. It would make him feel so much more, if you ever could be, committed. And as Steph said, when you're given that captain's armband, honestly, how proud you are is absolutely ridiculous.
It is, and I wanted to ask, we look to the bench, you know, does it feel that we've got too many defenders a little? Obviously still got Laporte there, Cancelo is still part of the team, Ake as well. When we speak about the rotation, trying to keep players happy for Newcastle, Pep's got a similar problem as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, I know managers can't have enough players, they like to stockpile them, but ultimately, you have to make sure you've got cohesion in your squad. And if you have too many players, you look at Chelsea last season, it can quickly turn into, a negative for the team and the whole club. So it's a fine balance and act. Obviously, there's still a couple of weeks left to the window. I imagine, as always, be a mad rush towards the end, where teams sort of trying to figure out where they're at and what they need. There might be ins and outs still, but yeah, it's definitely something that managers have to be careful. If you have too many players, that can definitely have a negative effect on your squad dynamics.
Yeah, I think I think even Chelsea, Thiago Silva was saying last year. I mean, they had to even expand the dressing room, which obviously is tough. Moving to the other side of the pitch, Steph. We won't start with the big man, as Ali McCoy likes to call him, who I think we're going to be hearing from a little bit later on in the show. But looking at our two wide players, we're thinking it'll either be obviously Alvarez or Foden, but Grealish on the other side didn't start against Burnley. So why do you think he's been chosen to come back in today against Newcastle?
Look, I think we've got to kind of understand where players are at. I think Grealish played a lot of games last year for City and played really well and really improved throughout the season. And I think the pre-season's been short for Man City, and obviously Pep will know what his decision is in training. But in terms of Wednesday, I think we've seen glimpses of what Jack Grealish did last year in terms of last season. I think for Grealish, it's just that run of games and getting that rhythm and getting that confidence, especially when you're a wide player. You need to be able to have confidence when you're 1v1, and you need to be able to link up, and he already has that relationship with Haaland. So for me, I think this team has probably got the most experience to play against Newcastle in terms of that wide area. Probably people are thinking, why is Palmer not starting? But I think in terms of experience and Premier League intensity, whether he plays Alvarez out there or Foden, I think that front three know how to press first and foremost, but also when we're attacking, they've got a better understanding where each of them will be.
Might still be recovering from his celebration. So it might just be easing him in gently.
All right, we'll come back to our attacking players in just a bit, but Shola, it's your first time on Matchday Live. Of course, I think over 300 appearances for Newcastle, and I just wondered, your time there, how was it? I mean, a hell of a career.
Yeah, this guy was, was there when I came through, as a YTS scholar, and seeing him, and took me out a few times to show me the bright lights of Newcastle.
He never came back out.
I never came back. After that first time, that was me. But no, listen, as I grew up 500 meters from the stadium. Newcastle United was everything. As a young child growing up, and to be able to obviously, play there for 14, 15 years was a real huge honour. Still is, still part of the club, and but yeah, it was definitely something that as a young boy, you spoke about the academy boys who have that vision of playing for a boyhood club. I luckily managed to realise that dream and play for a long time, and it was an honour. When I came in, so Bobby Robson was the manager. We were in the Champions League. We were flying high, and it was, and I thought that would be it. That's us moving forward. So little did I know, but it's great to see those times coming back. 20 years on, and looking at Eddie and watching how he works now, and the similarities to what I came in, are there. And you look at what we're trying to build and sustain. Is great. So I'm really excited with where we're at right now. Certainly in terms of our leadership. Dan Ashworth, the best for me, one of the best sporting directors there is. He understands how to build a club, a strategy, CEO, and so yeah, it's great. But yeah, I love my time at Newcastle, and like I say, you can't prize me away from the place.
Well, we're going to, speaking of 20 years on, we're going to roll back the clock 20 years, because there's a stat, I don't know if you know it, you've scored twice against City. Mate, I'm surprised they didn't call you up today, because whenever you've scored, Newcastle are unbeaten against City. Yeah, and I think we can have a look at a goal here. 2003. Do you remember this one, Shola?
I don't remember much, but yes, I do remember that. I didn't know what was going to happen there.
No.
But I don't think we won though, did we? I don't think I've ever been in a winning team against Man City.
You promised your own assist there. I'm thinking for fantasy football, would you have got an assist and a goal for that one?
I think Laura and Roberto will have something to say about that.
Steve, of course, you mentioned there, do you remember Shola coming through?
Yeah, absolutely. You always knew, you could tell Shola had ability. It's just, at that young age, have they got that kind of... It's not the case of hunger, but they need a little bit of luck as well. And but to be fair to Shola, when he got his opportunity, he took it, and obviously worked out a good partnership with likes of Haaland, Shearer, and other players as well. He was an absolute thorn in Sunderland's side. He was Sunderland's slayer. But you've got to take your hat off to what Shola did, and to play the games that he did, and the level, like kind of Champions League and stuff like that. But as I said, it's amazing because we talk and see each other on different occasions for different things. But me looking at Shola when he was a baby, to what he become is absolutely brilliant.
We've got another goal from you as well. This was in 2008. Saying, well, producer Darryl was saying a bit sloppy in my ear, which I don't think is fair, but tell you what, right place though to put the ball in the back of the net. I mean, maybe Richard Dunn would be
it was like ping pong, wasn't it? I would like to say, I meant that, but it looks like it came off my. I don't think I struck it properly.
They all count.
They all count.
Give the goalkeeper the eyes, haven't you?
Yeah.
I'm going to put it in that corner. No, I'm not. I'm going to shin it in that one.
They all count.
They all count.
Calm it down.
Yeah, I think we must have been on the losing end at that time. So I was like, listen, we're in it. We're still in it. So, but yeah, listen, like I said, it's playing against Man City over the years. It's always been a tough fixture. Certainly coming here to the Etihad, it was always, a place that you felt that you had to take your chances, you had to take those moments that you got in the game, and I think, certainly today against, treble winning side, with that experience, it's going to be really important that those moments that we have, when we press and we win the ball back, what can Newcastle do with it, because that will go a long way to deciding what happens in this match this evening.
Also, just wanted to ask you, just from where we doing bits of research and reading. I mean, some incredible moments for you in your career. I mean, you've scored at the Nou Camp, of course, competing in a World Cup for your country. Is there any moment that particularly stands out to you as one of your proudest moments?
I think that certainly my first goal at Newcastle. I think you don't, as a striker, as an attacking player at the time, trying to become a number 9. Scoring that first goal was a huge moment. But yeah, playing in the Champions League, and I think I was 21 at the time, you still don't feel like you've made it. You don't feel like, and playing against top players and scoring and doing well, that really sort of solidified and helped my confidence to know, I can move on. But certainly you mentioned it, I'm a thorn between two roses here. Playing against Sunderland, those were the highlights of any, I think, Newcastle fans' season, and to be able to play in a number of those and score, those were definitely the highlights for me, certainly during my time in Newcastle.
Brilliant stuff, thank you, Shola. That's Shola Ameobi, who is of course making his Matchday live debut. We of course have also got Steph and we've got Steve with us, and we want to say thank you to you for joining us. We have got, flipping heck, 13 minutes until kickoff, but before we start looking to get some maybe predictions and a final look at our attack, we had down Pitchside earlier on a man who sometimes when you think of him you just think of that wonder goal he scored against us. Mr. Peter Crouch joined FG to give us his thoughts on the game and Manchester City's season last year.
Yes, thank you, Kel. Well, we've had some pretty impressive Matchday Live guests, and it doesn't get more impressive than Peter Crouch, who joins me pitchside at the Etihad. Peter, thank you for joining us. Obviously, we're at the Etihad Stadium. I'm a Manchester City fan. There was a famous goal you scored here once to deny us Champions League football, and all in all, you had very, very happy memories playing here, didn't you?
I did, that was a special moment for me, especially the away end up there with the Tottenham fans, and something I'll always remember. But my mum's a City fan, and a lot of my uncles and cousins are all season ticket holders at City as well. So yeah, it was. I mean, I've had good and I've had bad here. We've been walloped here a few times, but that's one really good memory that obviously I always remember.
And looking at obviously how things have changed with this football club, when you were coming into a time where it was sort of still very much trying to get in the top 4, and obviously you were denied us that time. We won't hold you too much. The club's evolved so much now, hasn't it?
Well, you know what, like you say, Tottenham and City were on a par then, and we just pipped you that year, but it was always going to happen. City just kept improving, and obviously when the man in charge came into the club, Gvardiol, and you just knew they were going to go from strength to strength. Obviously the one that was missing was the Champions League. Managed to get it in the cabinet this year, and I don't doubt now there'll be a period of domination for City.
I hope you are right. Let's talk about our opponents today, Newcastle. They're very much at the start of their thing, but they had a very, very good season last year. Champions League football, obviously we've just played in the Super Cup. Is it a case of making a statement for them today?
Well, I just think of, you won't thank me for saying this, but obviously with De Bruyne being out, Bernardo Silva, with Newcastle being in the form that they're in, the confidence that they're in, it's been a horrible place for them to come. I think they've lost, the last 18 or something here. So if ever there was a time for them to get a result, they would think it today. But like you say, you could sit here and say that and still be embarrassed, because City have got enough ability to go out and win the game comfortably. But for a Newcastle perspective, you'd think today's the day where you can finally erase those demons.
I have to mention their striker as well, Isak. He seems to have settled in really, really well, and he's very, very good. He's got great attributes, hasn't he?
I love him as a player. Obviously, big, tall centre forward. What's not to like? He's good on the ball. He's got pace. He can play. If I'm Callum Wilson, I feel kind of aggrieved, really, not to not be playing. But you can't complain, because Isak's, the man at the moment, and they're full of confidence in every department. That's why, for me, I've been on holiday quite a bit. I missed the first few games of the season. So to be back in the Premier League with a game like tonight, incredibly excited to be here.
Of course, I have to mention Erling Haaland to you as well, a man who played in your position. He just seems like he's absolutely out of this world, doesn't he?
Yeah, it's just an absolute machine. There was a few question marks because he hadn't scored towards the end of last season, and again at the start of this one, and then bang, first game of the season, 4 minutes in, he bags, and he was just so sharp again. I don't think there will be anyone close to him again this season. He's a goal machine, and someone I love watching. I actually love watching him kind of like off the ball as well. You know, his movement, how he comes alive in the box. You know, as an ex-forward myself, it's a delight to watch him.
I'll tell you what else was a delight to watch, the Peter Crouch film. I've watched that on Amazon. If you haven't watched it, please give it a watch. Crouchy, let's talk us through that, because it goes, we won't spoil it too much, it goes through the highs, goes through the lows, and it just shows a lot about you as a footballer and your journey that you were on. Talk to us a little bit about the reaction of it.
Yeah, do you know what? It's a different kind of journey. I think my football journey was different to a lot of them. You know, there's lots of players who were very good and then they were brilliant, right? And mine was very up and down. I had difficult times. I had great times, and it was nice to share it. You never know how it's going to come across, because they interview lots of people, and you don't know what they're going to say about you. But thankfully, it was majority good, and I'm really pleased with the way it's come out, and very proud of it.
Yeah, you should be. And what about Sean Wright-Phillips? You played with him for a little bit in England. He's a Matchday Live regular. Yeah. Have we got any gossip on Sean that we can give back to the studio?
One of my favourite people. I absolutely love him. I don't know, one thing you might not know is me and Sean Wright-Phillips went skiing once. Incredible. And as you can imagine, it went how you imagine, really. We were both awful. And watching us on the slopes was one of the funniest things you'll ever see. It was for a documentary we were doing. I was doing a show for BBC, and Righty come along and did this thing. Oh my God, we had a laugh. But that's probably something you don't know about Righty. But I have to say, he set up a load of goals for me with England.
Yeah.
Great player, well respected at his club, rightly so. But a great person, Righty. So
he absolutely is. Right, before we head back, it's only right that I can show you my robot celebration and you can judge it a little bit. So it's sort of like a bit.
It's a bit stiff.
Yeah, it's a little bit stiff, isn't it? Can you maybe give us a little bit of a...
No, that's no
it's
robot.
all retired
I've had a robot injury, sorry. Been on holiday, I've done it too much. No robots from me today.
You'll have to stick with the stiff me then, I guess. Thank you so much for joining us on Matchday Live. FG and Peter Crouch from Pitchside.
Instead of sitting,
You've got to see it to believe it.
Do you know what I mean?
Those three, I tell you, we never get tired looking at those three trophies. Drink it in. That is right. Premier League champions, FA Cup winners, champions of Europe. Beautiful to see the three trophies out on show there, the Etihad Stadium. Of course, as well, 20 years we've been here, and I tell you what, who would have thought in 2 decades' time we'd have those three trophies on that pitch? I certainly didn't, but it's a dream come true. Not long before we hand over to Alistair Mann and Andy Morrison, who've got commentary for you today on the Manchester City app. Just a quick word, Steve, on the big man, Erling Haaland. Incredible season last year. I mean, he really enjoys, I think, a good physical battle as well. You've got Big Dan Burn at the back. It's going to be tough for him, but we'll be hoping to pick up where he left off at home.
Yeah, I mean, he's already got 2 under his belt straight away against Burnley. Me and Shola were talking before we came on air. Shola thinks he's going to get more goals this season. I have to agree, because he's obviously knows what to expect. I think for some defenders he would have been like, well, I don't know what I'm going to get against Erling Haaland. They know what they're going to get against him, but there's one thing knowing what you're going to get, and another thing stopping.
Yeah,
and he's that good because he's big, he's strong, he's aggressive, he's the perfect centre forward.
Absolutely. Remember as well, you can get on that vote on Twitter for your favourite goal at the Etihad last year. One of them was Haaland's, that one in the Champions League night. Right, we're going to have to get predictions quickly now, Shola. I know it's a little bit more difficult for you, of course. We know where your allegiances are, but can we get some final thoughts on a prediction?
Yeah, I think I think the game will go quite similar to the first game last season back in St James's Park, when both teams are just at each other now. So my prediction will be a 2-2.
2-2, nice.
Oh my God! Can you see that fence he's sitting on at the moment? It's not a chair, it's a fence. Wow.
Steph, what about you?
I'm going to go 2-1 City.
2-1 City. Love that, Steph. Steve?
3-2.
3-2. Goals, brilliant. Massive thank you to all three of my guests today, and thank you to you for joining us. Remember, come back at half-time, then at full-time. We'll be digging into all the action that we see here at the Etihad Stadium. It looks beautiful out there. Treble winners out on the pitch. Unbelievable. Thank you for having us. Sit back, relax. Final thing for me to say is come on, City.
90 days since the Blues were last here at the Etihad Stadium, and it's fair to say that quite a bit has happened since that eventful day when City lifted the Premier League title, and what a day it was. Since then, though, they've been to Wembley to win the first ever Manchester Derby Cup final, to Istanbul to